हेलो, यूके, यूरोप और अमेरिका के प्रिय दर्शकों, छोटी सी ब्रेक के बाद आपका फिर से हार्दिक स्वागत है। हाँ, तो मैं आपसे ब्रेक पे जाने से पहले ये बता रहा था कि आज हमारे बीच में एक बहुत ही विद्वान लेखिका, डॉक्टर साहब लेखिका है?
जी 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 जी,
लेखक भी ठीक है।
हाँ, लेखिका
पधारे हैं, जिन्होंने रामायण को इंग्लिश भाषा में ठीक उसी प्रकार लिखने का प्रयत्न किया है जिस प्रकार ऋषि वाल्मीकि जी ने पोइट्री फॉर्म में त्रेता युग में राम अवतार लेने से पहले किया था। आपको विदित है कि रामायण हिंदू धर्म में क्या स्थान रखती है। रामायण एक वो स्तंभ है जिस पे के हिंदू धर्म का आधार है। इस बुक को, ये जो बुक है, ए सन, ए प्रिंस, a husband and a king, रामायण, माई इंटरप्रिटेशन। तो ये किताब जिस महान लेखक ने लिखी है, उन्होंने अपने विचार इसमें दिए हैं और इस बुक को बीबीसी ने सीरियलाइज भी किया है। एक इंग्लिश कंपनी ने इसको छापा है इस देश के अंदर। इसके अंदर इन्होंने 48 पेंटिंग्स दी हैं जो त्रेता युग में रहने वाला समाज था, उसके आर्किटेक्चर को, उनके लिबास को, उनके रहने सहने के तरीकों को प्रदर्शित करती हैं। इसके साथ साथ इस पुस्तक में जो भाषा का प्रयोग किया गया है वो बहुत सरल है, सरल इंग्लिश में है, साफ सुथरी है, शैली बहुत ही उत्तम है और इतनी फ्लूइड है जैसे कि पानी बह रहा हो, रुकता नहीं। और ये बच्चों के लिए और बूढ़ों के लिए और बड़ों के लिए एक बराबर सबको एंगेज करती है। तो आइए दर्शकों, आपको इन आदरणीय महिला लेखक से आपकी भेंट कराते हैं और ये हैं ज्योति कौशल जी, जिन्होंने ये पुस्तक लिखी है। और इन्हीं से पूछते हैं कि ये जो पुस्तक आपने लिखी है, क्यों लिखी है, क्या जरूरत पड़ गई आपको इस पुस्तक को लिखने की और किससे आपने प्रेरित होकर के ये बुक लिखी है। Who inspired you? I know you may not be able to understand Hindi, but who inspired you that you have written this book? Could you kindly let us know, our viewers, about it?
Certainly, Mr. Gupta ji. Can I just first say thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
You are welcome.
It's a wonderful show. My inspiration, I think, was as a child when I first heard the story from my parents. I fell in love with the story, as many people do. Unable to speak Hindi and not being able to read Hindi, I looked for English translations. I was not satisfied with the translations that I found. Some were too complicated, very, very detailed, very literal translations. Others were very simplified, glanced over the story. Many were unillustrated. And as a child, you are desperate to see what your heroes look like. And another thing was many did not include the Uttarakhand, which I feel is a very important part of the story. So I decided at a very early age I would write this interpretation. But it wasn't until 20 years or so later, after I started my family, and I was looking for a book, a translation, that I thought, okay, I've got to write the version that I'm looking for.
Very good. आपने अपने इसमें लिखा है इंट्रोडक्शन में
हाँ जी.
कि as a child you loved Ramayana
Very much.
and to you it looked at like a fairy tale.
Very much so.
But then you also thought that it was a true story.
Definitely. There was never any doubt in my mind it was a true story.
Why was that in your mind that let you feel that it was a true story? Why?
I think it's
Because as a child, you know, anybody...
very much so, very much so. But I think it was the love for Lord Ram, Lord Sita, Sita Mataji and Hanumanji, and just the beauty of the story. I just thought there's so many beautiful parts to the story, and not just in the main story, the little sub-stories, the story of Kevat and Vibhishan, why he loved Ram so much, even though he was Ravan's brother. These little stories I think was so special. There was never any doubt in my mind that this is a true story.
And I am really, Dr. Sahab, impressed, you know, with her beginning, and she has devoted this to Lord Hanuman, and she says, without you, the Ramayana cannot begin, and without you, it does not reach its end. What a beautiful, you know, something. I like that.
Thank
It
you.
impressed me when I just opened your book, and this shalok, this mantra, whatever you may call it, you know, this impressed me a lot. Dr. Sahab, to you, please.
Jiotty, thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts on Ramayan. When you mentioned the translation, मैं थोड़ा अपने दर्शकों को अंग्रेजी में अनुवाद करते हुए हिंदी में भी बताता हूँ कि वास्तव में आपने कहा कि ये रामायण जो है आप हिंदी तक भी नहीं पढ़ते हैं, तो ये कैसे हुआ फिर? ये आपको कैसे पता कि जो तुलसीकृत रामायण और जो वाल्मीकि रामायण जो कि संस्कृत में है, कि उसका और ये जो अंग्रेजी के अनुवाद उसमें मतलब वो मिलते हैं क्या? How do you basically, my question is, when you cannot read the original script of either the Tulsi Ramayan or the Valmiki Ramayan, how are you able to ascertain the, as it were, the accuracy? I wouldn't call it a story, because the word story has an implicit sort of feeling to it, that it is in fact fictitious. We don't believe it's fictitious. We believe it is an epic. हम इसीलिए इसको इतिहास, हाँ, कथा कह सकते हैं या इतिहास कह सकते हैं. And in fact, the Mahabharata and Ramayan, according to our Dharma Shastras, are classified as itihas, not as stories. So, as an epic, how were you able to ascertain the veracity, as it were, of your rendition of the Ramayan in accordance to the established Ramayan, such as Tulsi Ramayan, which is in Avadi, and also Valmiki Ramayan in Sanskrit?
No, I understand, and it's a very good question. I think you have to look at it as a very simplified form. I'm trying to introduce, imagine giving this book to a child age 10 or 11 years old who, like myself, does not know anything at that time of the story and is not aware of the different versions of the story. I want to instill that curiosity, that love for the story, to get them thinking, oh, actually, I want to find out more. And when then you set them on that path, they can then go in and explore Tulsi's version or Valmiki's version.
But again, you're using the word story. When you say a story, it's like a story of Hansel and Gretel.
I understand.
Do you understand? We must stay away and also instill within Hindu children that these are not mere stories. They are actually historical epics and accounts of our history, the history of Bharatvarsh.
I understand.
Would you not agree?
Oh, absolutely. But it's, as I say, it's when you are talking to a child, you have to talk at that level. You want to arouse that curiosity. You want to arouse that interest. Once you have their attention, you can then educate them further. So I appreciate, I'm getting things wrong.
May I suggest here, then perhaps a way, having children myself, as a father myself, and you're a mother, that children are far more, I think, sort of open to watching it in a physical depiction, i.e. in a serialized version. What are your thoughts on that? Perhaps we ought to look at your book and think about serializing it.
That's an interesting idea, but I think you'll find that in a book you will get the sense of emotion, the thought processes, which you don't always get in a serialization of such as a movie or something like that. With a book, you kind of experience the feelings of the characters, you experience their pain. So I appreciate, it's a wonderful idea to serialize, and an audio serialization, as was at the BBC, was very good in that fact. But that would be my only fear in that.
But I note here from your notes that you've actually you've watched films to
Very much so.
To compile your book. So obviously they've played some part.
Oh,
a
very
visual
much so.
depiction. They did play some part in you, as it were, formulating this book.
Very much so.
Did you watch the serialization made by Sagas, or
I did.
or the black and white
yes,
movies
yes.
of yesteryear?
I have watched the black and white movies,
Yeah.
which I think for me had a lot more emotion in them. I have watched Saga's serialization. I have watched, there's been a recent cartoon serialization. And also there was a serialization that came after Saga's serialization, which I think ended abruptly. But all of them, I think, offer a viewpoint, a different viewpoint. And I think it's quite interesting because everyone who reads the Ramayan takes something unique from the story. We understand the main story, but it's what you take from the story which I think is the most important part.
And how your book has been taken by the readers, and how it is different from other versions?
My version is what you could say is a complete version. It includes the whole of Ram's life, including the important Uttarakhand, which I found many translations did not include the Uttarakhand, which in my book is almost a third of the book. It's a very important part of the story. It also includes the sub-stories, as I was saying earlier, as I say, the one with Gevat, the story of Bhavabhishan, the story of Shabri, also known as Bilani, all these little stories, they all have a significance. It's written in poetic verse, so I've tried to keep the text very concise, to the point. It's all about the emotions, the characters, and how they work and how they interact with each other. And as you already said, Mr. Gupta ji, it's illustrated. I wanted pictures of people in the ancient time.
Can you show some of those?
Yes, I have got some of these illustrations.
Benefit of the...
In no particular order. This is, this is a picture of Angad talking to Ravan
in his court.
in his palace, and you can see his palace is open and with beautiful wall carvings. There's a lion sitting either side of his throne. This is a picture of Lakshman when he goes to attack or goes to confront Sugriv. Again, this multi-story building was prevalent at that time, which, as a child, you don't see this kind of beautiful architecture. Especially, I think, at my time, where there was limited information, limited books on this. This is a picture of the Swayamvar. This is Sita and
Swayamvar,
Ram.
yes.
Sorry, Swayamvar. And again, her costume is typical of the period, with the girdle and the festoons on her belt. And also to get the idea of the young Ram, the young Sita.
Could I just interject here? When you say the period, which period are we referring to?
Well, I have...
Treta Yuga?
Treta Yuga. But the Treta Yuga, how would you define Treta Yuga? When would you say that Treta Yuga started, for instance?
Well, I wouldn't give it a set date to. What I have tried to do is look at books with costumes and architecture of ancient India. One particular that I refer to was one by R.P. Mohapatra, and there's Anand Kumar Swayamvari. Might have pronounced that incorrectly, forgive me. But I wanted to just give a child the general idea of this is what the ancient people look like. This was the idea.
But the only problem we have with that, Jiotty ji, is that we are telling our children that, for instance, Dwapar Yuga expanded many tens of thousands of years, whereas most of our historical things, for instance, started 5,000 years before Christ. We now know, for instance, the discovery of Dwarka in the Bay of Cambay, dating back to before the last ice age, about 11,000 years. So do you not think we need to impress upon children also that as it were, the history is far before, what we are told by the historians, which have been proven wrong?
Oh, I agree with you entirely. But as I say, going back to what I was saying earlier, was that just trying to draw their attention. I want to kind of lead them into this world, and then they can find out more. Then they can pursue this thirst of knowledge and want to find out, actually, what is the Traya? Where is Dwarka Yuga? Tell us about this bridge to Lanka that we have seen on the satellite pictures.
Jiotty ji, thank you so much for coming over to our show and given an insight into what you have done, why you have done, and what it will be, how it will be benefited to our future generations. I wish we can make some sort of program by which we can bring you for a few more times.
And also feedback from our viewers.
We would like to give us your feedback that we should bring such programs for the benefit of our future generations quite often. We would like to hear from you, care of MATV. Kindly don't forget to give us your feedback. We shall appreciate that. And now we are going to a short break. Don't go away. Stay tuned.